Hello, myself Sunil Ramakrishna. Here basically we are talking about PHP, and that is number 16. That is the part 16 basically you can say. So what is PHP? Everything basically we got the information. We know that which physical space basically are there of the PHP, that are basically 1,000 cities, and each and every 1,000 cities basically are mapped with the commands basically. That is basically told as a command basically. You can't basically directly reach with the physical place basically. Why? Because power supply basically of the computer, for example, you are running something in PHP and that is connecting to 100 cities, so directly basically you can't connect to the computer from the computer to the 1,000 cities. For that basically the special power supplies are given, that basically are given from the server only basically. So only server basically have the authority to connect with the physical place. That also basically very rare software basically, very rare software. Mostly basically you can't connect with the physical place. So here now basically we will start with the PHP basically, that is the basic syntax basically. So one of the person told that yeah, syntax means what actually? In normal English word basically, if you use the syntax word, what is that? Syntax means particular information basically is given and you have to work according to that information. That's all. That's a simple language of syntax. So in PHP also basically certain the PHP designer group basically they have draw certain level of syntax, means certain level of commands basically. If you want to do this, you have to write this way only, otherwise it will give an error basically by the PHP compiler. What is compiler basically, that we have already seen that. So one of the person was in simple language basically PHP syntax is this only basically. Whatever format basically is given by the PHP designer basically, who actually designed the PHP basically, on the base of the physical areas, which basically is 1,000 cities, that if you want to do, if you will run this number of this line command, then it will connect to that physical area. If you will run this line of command, then it will connect to that physical area. If you will run basically that command, if you will declare one simple variable basically, it will connect to that city and to that particular area. So you can just imagine basically up to what level the PHP basically are connected, and it's very dangerously connected basically. But it's basically used in human need creation. So if it's in human need creation, that means it's more dangerous basically. So the people who are into the government sectors, who are basically into the police department, who are basically into the legal departments, who are basically into the company side basically, they are basically playing very dangerous role basically. So here basically that we are not going up to that level basically, because this everything basically we have already discussed long before basically. So one of the person told that syntax is basically this. PHP designer basically has given certain level of command, created certain level of command. You have to run that command on that way only basically. That way means if it is written echo, then you have to write down echo only basically. No syntax. Here basically the PHP is syntax basically. It's a case sensitive basically. Same way basically the C and C++ basically are case sensitive. Same way the PHP is also case sensitive. Java is also case sensitive basically. Java is also case sensitive. C sharp basically in .NET basically are case sensitive basically. So case sensitive means if in syntax basically the designer basically, that is the PHP designer, has told that basically you have to write down E in small letter, then you have to write down in E in small letter. If they say that basically you have to write down E in capital, then basically you have to write down basically in E as a capital basically. So here basically few syntax basically, see basically how they basically write the PHP code basically. PHP script basically can be placed anywhere in the documents. So in document basically there are 15 line HTML text given. After that you can add PHP. After that basically if you combo box basically has HTML combo box basically has given. After that basically you can add a PHP. So anywhere basically you can add the PHP basically, but it should be systematic basically. That's why basically people creates functions, people basically import functions, and they basically couples functions. So PHP basically, see basically how the PHP basically is written. This way basically the PHP is written, and here basically you have to write down the entire PHP code. So for example, uh, 10 line of HTML code is given. You want to write the PHP, so you have to add this much, this two line, and in this between basically you have to write down PHP code. Again Dropbox basically is given, then basically again basically you have to add a PHP and then basically question mark PHP down. So like this basically you can write down the PHP syntax. So anywhere basically in the PHP file code basically, PHP file basically you can write down the code basically of the PHP and write, this is the syntax basically of the basic PHP basically, and file extension is .php, and file extension is basically same way basically the notepad extension is txt, PHP extension is .php. So compiler basically when you run the PHP file in the browser basically, then basically the PHP only understand that .php file basically. If you are writing if you are running one .txt file, then basically it's very it will not run basically and you have written something as a PHP, then it will not work. Why? Because the compiler only understand .php file. So you have to write down .php file, and within that .php file basically you have to write down the PHP command only basically, no other command basically you can write. So see basically this is the .php file, and HTML data basically also HTML file, HTML contain also basically it contains basically. Echo is the basically command basically which basically gives the file basically. So see basically one simple PHP file is written basically. These all are basically the HTML files. This basically is the PHP. Why? Because this syntax basically is written this way, and in between basically the one command is written echo hello world. Echo means to print anything basically. If you want to print anything in PHP, the echo command basically is written basically like this basically. You have to save the file and the output will be hello world, exactly same way basically it's written basically. So one of the person told that this everything basically, that means one of the person told that this HTML, this tag basically which is written, that also basically contains the physical area. Exactly basically. All the HTML tag also basically is connected with the physical area. XML basically files are connected with the physical area. So you will not able to believe it basically. Few XML code basically is written, but it totally connected with the physical areas. XML compiler basically are there. So they basically have the entire data of XML physical areas. Same way PHP compiler basically contains each and every exact physical areas data. But it can be compiler also and can be directly dumped into the server also basically, because it's very dangerous. Na physical area you are basically you can't give to anyone basically. So mostly basically people keeps into the server or basically might be compiler also. So next video basically we are going to see a little bit more about this topic.